Welcome back to the channel, where real courage meets timeless tradition. Today's story takes you deep into the heart of Buckingham Palace, where silence, discipline, and a moment of violence collide. But before we begin, let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell icon, because tomorrow, at this exact time, we'll bring you another powerful tale you won't want to miss. Now, settle in. This one gets intense. A drunk tourist attacked a royal guard, but what happened next shocked everyone. The summer sun beat down on the cobbled square outside Buckingham Palace, casting long shadows across the tourists who had gathered to watch the changing of the guard. Children waved miniature flags, cameras clicked from every angle, and for a moment, the world felt orderly, peaceful. But that calm was shattered the second Brandon Kellerman, a 38-year-old tourist from Texas, stumbled into the scene. Drenched in sweat and stinking of alcohol, Brandon cut a chaotic figure. At 5'11" and over 200 pounds, with a broad chest and flushed face, he wore a wrinkled polo shirt and cargo shorts that looked like they hadn't been washed in days. Clutching a half-empty bottle of cheap beer, he staggered toward the crowd with a wild gleam in his eye. "What are you all looking at?" he slurred, his voice thick with resentment and whiskey. A few people chuckled nervously, thinking it was some kind of act, until he smashed the bottle against a nearby lamppost, the sharp crack causing everyone within earshot to flinch. A mother pulled her child close. An older couple backed away, exchanging uneasy glances. But Brandon wasn't finished. He threw his arms wide and shouted, "You think this is normal? All this pomp and pageantry? It's a lie! All of it!" His words were spat out like venom, laced with frustration, confusion, and something darker, something unhinged. He staggered toward a group of teenagers snapping selfies near the palace gates. "You think this is funny?" he growled, yanking one of them by the backpack strap and dragging him forward. The boy, no older than 15, turned pale. "We weren't filming," he stammered, eyes wide with fear. Brandon shoved him backward into his friends and spun to address the crowd, now gathering in a cautious circle around him. "You're all watching me, judging me, plotting," he screamed, his voice cracking. The beer bottle in his hand trembled, not from fear, but from the effort it took to hold in whatever storm was building inside him. Tourists began to retreat. Some took out their phones, others whispered to nearby palace guards. But none of them could predict how far this man was willing to go. And standing only feet away, perfectly still beneath the sweltering heat, was a royal guard in a crimson uniform, unmoving, watching, waiting, and Brandon was just getting started. Brandon's eyes darted wildly, searching for something, anything that would give him a new target. His breathing was ragged, chest rising and falling beneath his sweat-soaked shirt. That's when he saw him. Standing no more than 20 feet away, motionless beneath the British sun, was a royal guard in full ceremonial uniform. Bright red tunic, gleaming black boots, a towering bearskin cap shadowing his eyes, a living statue, or so it seemed. To Brandon, the sight was infuriating. While tourists stood frozen in fear, this man didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. That stillness, that iron control, felt like a challenge. It was everything Brandon wasn't: calm, focused, unshaken. The kind of man people respected. And respect was something Brandon hadn't tasted in a long time. "Look at this guy," he spat, stumbling forward with the bottle still clutched in his fist. "Too good to look at anyone? Too important to react?" He weaved through the nervous crowd, sweat dripping down his back, the alcohol turning his limbs loose but dangerous. Lance Corporal Thomas Hale had been trained for moments exactly like this. At 34, with 2 deployments in Afghanistan behind, he had seen worse chaos than one drunk man could conjure. But that didn't mean he ignored it. Every subtle movement, every twitch in Brandon's step was logged, calculated, assessed. But Hale didn't move. He couldn't. Not yet. Brandon stepped in close, way too close. The stench of beer, cigarettes, and desperation hit the guard's nose like a wall. He waved the empty bottle inches from Hale's chest, tapping the buttons of the uniform with its jagged edge. "Bet you think you're better than us, huh?" he hissed, "with your shiny toys and your fancy clothes." The crowd shifted, murmurs rising as cell phones came up, lenses trembling in uncertain hands. A few tourists backed away. Some stayed, frozen by curiosity or fear. One elderly veteran standing near the gates clenched his jaw, his hand tightening around a walking stick, ready if needed. But the guard stood tall, still, unbreakable. Brandon leaned in so close, their faces nearly touched. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Say something, soldier boy. I dare you." But Thomas Hale didn't flinch. He was waiting for the moment that justified a response, and it was coming fast. The tension was suffocating, thick in the air like a storm about to break. Brandon's hand trembled as he stared into the guard's face, searching for any hint of reaction. But Lance Corporal Thomas Hale remained unmoved, his eyes forward, his stance unbroken, not a flicker of emotion. And that's when Brandon snapped. With a sudden roar, he reared back and drove the bottle down with full force, glass smashing across the side of Hale's head. The sound was sickening. A sharp crack, followed by a chorus of gasps from the crowd. Tourists screamed. A child began to cry. A woman dropped her phone. Time seemed to freeze. Shards of glass exploded outward like deadly confetti, glinting in the sunlight. Blood appeared almost immediately, running in thin red lines down the side of Hale's face, dripping onto his pristine red tunic. But still, he didn't move. Not a step, not a sound. Brandon stumbled back, staring at the blood as if he had uncovered some twisted prize. A smile crept onto his face. "Not so tough now, are you?" He sneered, holding up the broken bottleneck like a trophy, the jagged glass gleaming at the edges. But this wasn't over. Fueled by adrenaline and madness, Brandon gripped the neck of the shattered bottle and raised it again, this time aiming for the guard's exposed throat. The bearskin cap offered no protection there. One direct strike could be fatal. The air grew electric. The crowd panicked, shuffling backward in waves, some screaming for security, others too frozen to speak. From the corner of the square, a police officer pushed through the crowd, hand on his radio, calling for backup. But he was too far, too slow. The threat was seconds from becoming tragedy. And through it all, Hale stood tall. Blood streamed down his temple, soaking into his collar. His jaw clenched, but his eyes remained fixed forward. Inside, years of training screamed for action, every combat instinct begging to take control. But discipline held him there, standing in the space between tradition and survival. Then Brandon's voice cut through the noise, low, furious. "Let's see how still you stand after this." His arm began to swing forward. The crowd held its breath, but so did the soldier. Because in less than a second, everything was about to change. Just as Brandon's arm reached the top of its arc, the broken glass aimed straight for the guard's throat. Everything changed. Lance Corporal Thomas Hale moved. It was so fast, most people didn't even see it happen. 1 second, he was a statue, bleeding, motionless. The next, he was a soldier in action. With surgical precision, he shifted his rifle to his left hand and brought his right arm up in a perfectly timed block. His hand locked around Brandon's wrist like a steel trap. The bottle froze mid-swing, inches from his neck. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras trembled in stunned hands. The transformation was instant and total. This wasn't just a ceremonial guard anymore. This was a combat veteran. "That's enough," Hale said, his voice low but commanding. No panic, no rage, just the cold control of someone who had been trained to operate under pressure far worse than this. Brandon's face twisted with confusion, rage, and fear. He tried to yank his arm back, but Hale's grip didn't budge. Then, wild and desperate, Brandon threw a sloppy left hook, aiming for the side of Hale's already bleeding face. But the guard didn't flinch. He slipped the punch by shifting his head just an inch, letting the fist fly past harmlessly. And in that split second, Hale adjusted his stance, stepping in and redirecting Brandon's momentum with practiced grace. Using his own body weight against him, Hale spun Brandon toward the palace wall. The impact wasn't brutal. It was calculated, hard enough to stop him, gentle enough to avoid permanent harm. Brandon hit the stone with a dull thud, the broken bottle falling from his hand and shattering completely on the pavement. Hale kept him pinned with one hand on his collar, his other arm holding the ceremonial rifle in perfect control. Blood still ran down the side of his face, but his breathing remained steady, his posture precise. 8 years of service, Hale said evenly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. 2 tours in Afghanistan. That bearskin cap you just struck, that's not just a symbol, it's earned. Brandon tried to twist free, but Hale held firm. "You want to disrespect the uniform?" he continued, voice like iron. then you better be ready to face the man behind it. And in that moment, Brandon realized this wasn't a man playing soldier. This was a soldier choosing not to fight until now. Brandon's body slumped against the palace wall, his breath ragged, his confidence shattered. The man who moments ago had been shouting like a king of chaos now looked small, broken. His legs trembled beneath him, the adrenaline and alcohol draining fast, replaced by something unfamiliar: fear. All around, the crowd stood frozen, watching in stunned silence. A few had tears in their eyes, others simply stared, their phones now lowered, forgotten. They had come expecting ceremony. What they got was a lesson in control, discipline, and raw restraint. Blood continued to drip from Lance Corporal Thomas Hale's temple, running in steady, crimson lines down his face, soaking into the collar of his red tunic. But still, he didn't waver. Not in posture, not in tone. "The difference between you and me," Hale said quietly, tightening his grip as Brandon gave one final weak attempt to twist away, "is that I've fought for something. I've stood shoulder to shoulder with men who believed in duty, in honor. You? You're just angry at the world and too weak to face it." Brandon whimpered something unintelligible. It didn't matter. Police officers were finally breaking through the crowd. One approached with handcuffs, moving slowly, eyes wide with respect for the soldier who had just neutralized a live threat with zero civilian harm. Hale nodded and began the controlled transfer. He released Brandon's collar, guided his arm behind his back with practiced efficiency, and allowed the officer to complete the arrest. Every motion was clean, no hesitation, no ego, just purpose. "3 charges," the officer muttered, locking the cuffs: assault on a serviceman, public endangerment, and resisting arrest. Brandon's head hung low. His earlier arrogance was gone, lost in the face of a man he couldn't intimidate, couldn't shake. He had bled, and still, the guard stood tall. A retired Royal Marine stepped forward from the crowd, eyes locked on Hale. He raised his hand in a crisp salute. "Well done, son. You handled that just like we used to. Controlled, clean." Hale returned the salute with flawless form. "Thank you, sir. And thank you for being ready to step in." As Brandon was led away, sobbing and defeated, a palace medic finally approached Hale. "Sir, your head. You need stitches." Hale nodded once, steady. "I'll be treated when I'm properly relieved." "Sir, until then, my post remains." And so he stood, blood on his face, resolve in his bones, proving that true strength doesn't lash out. It holds the line. What would you have done in that moment? Would you have held your ground like the guard, or broken protocol to protect yourself sooner? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know. Were you surprised by the guard's reaction? Do you think he waited too long, or did he handle it with the perfect balance of discipline and control? Stories like this aren't just about action. They're about values, about restraint, about what it means to stand for something bigger than yourself, even when the world around you loses its mind. So tell us, what part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it the moment the bottle shattered, the guard's calm under pressure, or the realization that these ceremonial figures are, in truth, trained soldiers with stories of their own? Your comments help us understand how these moments land with viewers across the world, and it reminds others that there's more to courage than just fighting back. So take a second, scroll down, and share your reaction. And if you know someone who thinks these guards are just for show, send them this story. Let them see what strength really looks like.